In Accra, also live on our numerous affiliates across the country, around the world. We're streaming live on 3news.com. Download the tuning app from the Google Play, Apple iOS store. Listen to us on the go. Coming up this afternoon, pressure piles on investigative bodies to commence probe into source of former Sanitation and Water Resources Minister's Fund, Cecilia Benadapa's missing stash of cash, with the office of the special prosecutor receiving hundreds of petitions already. The tone of the president's acceptance of her resignation, meanwhile, is coming under some scrutiny. We have details for you if you stay with us. Also this afternoon, family of 34-year-old man who died after allegedly being brutalized by police during a swoop at Awusah demands justice amid heightened tension in the area. We're live there shortly for details and more scrutiny of government dealings by the minority in Parliament as the alleged 1.2 billion cedis contract to supply SHS students with tablet was granted without parliamentary approval. Also in the package, 11th anniversary wreath laying ceremony since the passing of President John Evans at Mills underway. We'll get details for you shortly if you stay with us here on 3FM 92.7. A pleasure that you could be a part of this afternoon's bulletin. It's streaming live on Facebook. Our handles 3FM 927. Same handles on Twitter as well. 3FM 927. I am Eric Mawuena Egbeta. Let's settle on the details now. And if the resignation of Sanitation and Water Resources Minister Cecilia Benadapa was to douse the inferno over the missing stash of cash from her home, it has done quite the opposite, with pressure mounting on investigative bodies to probe the matter. The former minister, in her resignation letter, said she would subject herself to investigations seeking to, among many things, exonerate herself from what she believes is a twisting of the reported sums which went missing from her home. The words have sparked a new verve in demands to have agencies responsible, particularly the Office of the Special Prosecutor, probe the matter. Media reports are already suggesting up to 200 petitions have already been submitted to the Special Prosecutor demanding immediate investigations into the matter. It is unclear as to whether or not the OSP, by these petitions, has already commenced investigations into this, but it's brought about conversations as to which entity should be undertaking an investigation like this. Would recall as well that on Friday, the business statement of the House captured the now former minister appearing before the House to answer questions as to how she had that amount of cash in her home. Dr. Fredo Kodro is a governance expert. I will pick his thoughts shortly on the telephone lines and get an understanding as to exactly what it is that should be done, who should be undertaking the investigations, and whether or not, again, another portion of the entire conversation being the president's tone in responding to the resignation by Madame Dapa, whether or not it is subject or tantamount to clearing, as some have suggested, by many others. And also we'll hear from a cross-section of Ghanaians. But let's take you to the Ashanti region while we wait to connect with all of these individuals, where family of a 34-year-old suspect who is now deceased is demanding justice over an alleged brutality that led to his death. Salihuddin Tafid alias Sheila died shortly after he was arrested in a police swoop on Sunday. The family claimed the police beat the deceased to a pulp and left him to die. The sudden death of Salahuddin angered some youth of Goru, a suburb of Awusah, who stormed the Awusah police station and vandalized property. Ibrahim Abubakar has been keenly following the development there and reports.
Now, Kama has returned at Awusah after some irate youth attacked the police station yesterday. They were accusing the police of unjustifiably killing one of their own. Now, they came here in their numbers, pelting stones at the officers and damaging properties belonging to the Ghana Police Service. Reinforcement team had to be deployed here to maintain law and order. For now, everything is under control. Though no arrest has been effected, the police says it has commenced investigations and will ensure that all perpetrators are brought to book. We will be monitoring development here and update you subsequently.
Right then, Ibrahim Abubakar will join us on the telephone line as well. Meanwhile, an eyewitness has been providing a bit more details as to exactly what it is that they saw.
That moment, about 2-3 minutes, they called Alaji and informed the Alaji that the boy, Shila, the police people have arrested the boy. And he said, we are all working here, but how come that they have arrested Shila? And the Alaji told me that, I should check where they say they have arrested Shila. So I just came out. When I came out, I just ran. When I came out, I searched and then I went and they told me he's at the back there. I just went and the boy was dead, lying down dead. The boy was lying down. No one was there because the police people came, they do the scatter. All the people here, they all ran away. So I went there and the boy was dead. So I went there. So there was another boy staying in the house. He saw, because I was there, he came, then we took the body. If you have arrest somebody, and then the fellow, maybe something happened to him, the first thing you have to do is you have to take him to the hospital. Even though if he's a criminal or whatever it is, you have to take him to the hospital. Then first aid or whatever it is. If he come normal, then whatever the case is you can do. But you shouldn't have leave the fellow like that, then you go away. Now what we are seeking is that we want justice. Because we want justice. We don't know why that he arrested those who were not dead. They sent them to the police station and left him alone there.
And so obviously the family demanding justice there from the police and all relevant agencies. We'll get a bit more from my colleague Ibrahim Abubakar as well as to exactly what this is and what next line of action the family will be expected to take. But let's take you to the John Evans Tamils Memorial Park, where the 11th wreath laying ceremony since the passing of President Mills is currently underway. Judith Awachitando, she's there for us. She's joined us on the telephone. Judith, exactly what's been happening?
Right, Mawuena. So currently I'm at the 11th anniversary wreath laying event happening at the Assembly Park, where former President, the late John Evans Tamils, was buried. Now, currently, we're having a preaching session going on, of course, but earlier we had the likes of former President John Dramani Mahama, who had arrived, and also we had the Speaker of Parliament, Alban Sumana Pabing, who also arrived earlier this morning at the event grounds. Of course, almost all the members of Parliament are represented with the minority. Is also here. We also have the chairman of the party, national chairman of the NDC, Johnson Ketia. He's represented, as well as the general secretary of the party, CCC Egbeta. And of course, there are a lot of dignitaries here. The family of the late former President John Evans Tamils are also heavily represented. We also had his brother giving a speech earlier. It was more of a scripture reading that he had given. And so we are yet to hear the Speaker of Parliament. We are here to hear former President John Dramani Mahama as well give their speeches, as well as Honorable Johnson Ketia also talk. But currently, it's a solemn mood here. One of the preachers is giving he's preaching basically over here at the event ground. So that's what happens here at the 11th anniversary laying event.
Right then, that's Judith Orchitando, my colleague, providing a bit more details there for us as to exactly what's happening at that wreath laying ceremony. And we're moving away from this, and government's decision to supply tablets to all SHS students has come under intense scrutiny as the minority has disclosed the award of a 1.2 billion cedis contract of the said tablet was without parliamentary approval. The Vice President, Dr. Bawumia, earlier this year disclosed that all students in secondary schools will be issued a free tablet each by the government. The decision, according to him, forms part of the government's digitization agenda. Minority Chief Whip Kwame Govins-Agbodja says the minority will file a motion for a parliamentary probe as there are procurement records. There are no procurement records for the supply of the said tablets.
Dr. Bawumia, our Vice President, now campaigning and not having enough time to sit at the office to do anything, promised to supply tablets to senior high school students, forgetting that even at the same education sector, managers of the schools are struggling to get even their capitation grant and everything running. The government unilaterally decided, even without approval of parliament, that they are supplying tablets to schools across the country. We are told these supplies could reach up to 1.2 billion Ghana cedi. As we speak, my brothers and sisters, there's no record that the Ministry of Education and Ministry of Finance went through any competitive tendering process to select the manufacturer and the person who would produce these things for the distribution of the schools. All we hear is that there's an amount of money set aside in the Get Fund formula to be used to pay this. We are also hearing that is the same supplier who supplied the so-called laptop to teachers that became controversial. The question is this: why is government shrouding every procurement process in such a level of secrecy? How much does one of the tablets cost? Who is the supplier? What are the credentials of this supplier who is supposed to supply over 1.2 billion cedis worth of tablets to schools? In which country in the world does textbooks exist only on tablets? When we encourage young people to learn how to read books, carry books and read as well, who is going to own these tablets? Are the tablets, when given to the student, going to remain properties of the students? What about communities, including some communities in my constituency, where you cannot get telephone connectivity? How will they be able to service this? How will they be able to get the latest versions of the books and other things? Once again, government thinking of their own parochial interests, of thinking that they can influence SHS students during voting. So you can ignore basic schools, you can ignore universities, and basically say that we are giving tablets to, secondary school students because they may be able to vote. And we think that the expenditure of 1.2 billion is a huge amount of money that can do something for this country. Parliament is going to institute the necessary motions to call for a probe into this act of the supply of the tablets, which details are shrouded or known to only the education minister and the government, because this is not the best way to run a transparent government. And
that's Kwame Govins-Agbodja, his Minority Chief Whip. Let's return to our top story this afternoon, where the pressure is piling on investigative bodies to commence a probe into the source of funds of the former Sanitation and Water Resources Minister, Cecilia Benadaba. Dr. Awusah Mohammed is a governance expert. He's joined us on the telephone lines with a bit more. Many thanks, Doc, for speaking to us. So, as we know it now, per reports, the special prosecutor, we understand, is inundated with petitions to probe the matter. Should the special prosecutor be the only state agency looking into this?
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to all your listeners. Yeah, I think this issue is getting serious, and we have to attach it with all the seriousness that it deserves. And for that matter, the special prosecutor, yes, definitely has to come in, but I think EOCO definitely will be required to come in here, and maybe the BNI possibly. So I think we need to tackle it from all angles so that at least we can get to the bottom of it as soon as possible.
So not just the special prosecutor, you are advocating Iyoko as well, and the BNI, now the National Investigative Bureau, all coming in to look into this matter. There are those who mentioned Shraj as well, and perhaps a parliamentary probe, because we know that as at last week, some parliamentarians had included it in a business statement that the former minister was to appear to answer questions as to how she had that amount of money in her home.
Yeah. So I think in Parliament, you have just mentioned of Parliament, and I think that is appropriate, and that must happen as soon as possible.
Now, another leg to all of this has been the president's acceptance letter. He says that he's confident the minister would be exonerated after investigations into the matter. There are those who make the argument that yes, you even have called on Iyoko, the NIB, and other agencies to look into the matter. Comments like these by the president already seeking to clear the minister of any wrongdoing. Your thoughts?
Yeah, that was actually the unfortunate aspect of the statement from the president. I remember this morning on one of your sister network, I made mention that maybe the president at this particular moment probably should have come that far with that statement. Yes, it is good to have confidence in people that you had confidence in, because he had confidence in her before appointing her. And then at this material moment, the president should still have confidence in her, but that should be latent. That should not be overt. That should not be out to the public that, I still have confidence in her, when there are a lot of concerns about her behavior. So that is the angle that I think the president probably could have done better in terms of that categorical statement, making it like, she's just been accused wrongly, and therefore you are confident that she'll come out clean. Yes, we probably who wish her, because she's a nice gentle. I mean, let me put it, not somebody that we all know to be quite crooked, and for that matter, any of us who will not be happy or are not happy with what is happening to her. But you can't trust anybody beyond certain limits, because it's human. Even your own mother, your own father, your own son, your own daughter, you can't trust her to that level. And for that matter, I think the president could have done better by leaving it to the public, leaving it to the authorities, leaving it to the
investigative bodies
and the court, and then allow the outcome. So when they exonerate her, then you can come and then you now celebrate. And a lot of people have celebrated with you as president that, yes, you made a good choice by appointing her. But at this material moment, it becomes like, the agencies are rather against her, or the public is against her, but you have confidence in her. And that is not what I think should have been the best statement from the president.
Right, Doc.
I made that statement somewhere that, or maybe sometimes some of these things come up because you are rushing to do things. I think the president could have thought of this carefully, particularly the content of the statement, before letting it out.
Right then, Doc. I appreciate that you could speak to us.
Thanks so much, my brother.
That's Dr. Awusah Mohammed. He's a governance expert. Let's just hear from a cross-section of Ghanaians as well, been sharing thoughts in relation to the missing cash in the home of the former minister.
It's very disappointing. I think that as a minister of state, she's supposed to set a good example. Given that she's a cabinet member and she knows how the economic situation is, how much keeping such an amount of money in the house will have an impact on the economy entirely. But I'm also more worried about the future of this country and how people like her in a position are building a society for young people like us who are coming up.
If you think it is not the government's money, it's not our money, why are you resigning? She needs to be investigated. The girl, whatever the situation, if she was being paid well, I don't think she would steal. And not treating your workers well. Because if you are treating them well, there is no way she'll come and steal from you.
So now, because I think I went to the went to my affairs with the ministry now. I was the kind of doesn't.
I think we are being somehow unfair with her, because the fact that she's a politician doesn't mean she doesn't have other things doing. I think we are not being fair to her.
A cross-section of views. Let's take you to the Ashanti region about that story of the family of a 34-year-old deceased demanding justice. Ibrahim Abubakar has been following the story for us. He's joined us on the telephone line. Ibrahim, we've been hearing from a family member already who's been stating quite clearly that they want justice. What is the next line of action beyond the call for or the demand for justice?
Well, that is the main call that they are making, because in fact, engage the youth and you realize that they are boiling with rage. They are saying that this is not the first time they are witnessing such police brutality leading to the death. Just last year, a swoop was conducted here, and an innocent person was shot dead. Now this has happened. So they will not sit down and wait for the third thing to happen. That's how come yesterday they had to go there, because they didn't understand why. If the person is a criminal, the police has conducted the swoop, the person is dead in your hands, but you just left him and go. The family in the morning were planning to bury the deceased, but upon advice, they had to take the deceased to the Konfanochi Teaching Hospital for autopsy to be conducted. So just a few minutes ago, and they brought the body, preparing according to Islamic rites to go and bury him. So they're saying that their next line of action will be determined by the content of the autopsy report. So for now, they are waiting for that to be ready before they decide on what to do next. But for them, all that they are saying is enough is enough. The police should conduct its job professionally, though they admit that there are elements of criminals within the area. This is Guru, just close to Asawase, where the police continuously conduct swoop here. But anytime they come, they should make sure that they do their job professionally and not end up killing innocent lives.
Right, then Ibrahim Abubakar with those details. There's news coming in from the Office of the Special Prosecutor in relation to Cecilia Benadapa, who is the former Sanitation Minister. It's titled Cecilia Benadapa at 11:55 GMT. That's about some 20-something minutes ago. On the 24th of July 2023, Cecilia Benadapa, who resigned from the position of Minister of Sanitation and Water Resources on the 22nd of July, was placed under arrest by the Office of the Special Prosecutor in respect of suspected corruption and corruption-related offences regarding large amounts of money and other valuable items reportedly stolen from her residence. Ms. Dapa is being questioned by authorized officers of the OSP. That's the latest from the Office of the Special Prosecutor, that the former minister is currently, if anything is to go by, being questioned by authorized officers from his office in relation to corruption and its related activities over the missing stash of cash from her home, become a subject of huge controversy and debate over the last few days. But the special prosecutor, following the news that over 200 petitions had been submitted to his office, says that she's placed her under arrest. She's currently under investigations. We'll be bringing you details as to exactly what it is that transpires as and when we have those details. We've been speaking to a governance expert as well, who says that the special prosecutor should not be the only individual currently investigating the former minister. To the courts now, where the High Court judge here in the Galamsey trial of Chinese national Aisha Wan has cautioned her to desist from crying in court consistently. This was after Aisha Wan broke down when Director of Public Prosecution Yvonne Atakrao-Bobisa put it to the Chinese national that she purposely re-entered Ghana despite knowing she couldn't do so without the consent of the Comptroller General after she was repatriated for illegal mining offences. Lord Edu Asare is in the court for us. Let's get details from him. Lord, it was supposed to mean that she's been crying a lot during this trial.
Indeed, Mawuena, this will be about the third time. So today, the cross-examination of Aisha Huang is still ongoing. So today, the Director of Public Prosecutions was questioning her about how she came back to the country, when she came back to the country, and other details, how she acquired her Ghana card and how she got vaccinated, and so on and so forth. So today, when she re-entered Ghana after being repatriated, she said that she did not remember exactly, but it was somewhere around July. And then the DPP told her that per the documents and things that they had, she actually got the vaccination shot in April of last year. So it couldn't be that what she's claiming is true. So the cross-examination went on for a while, and it got to the point where the DPP was saying that she purposely came to the country, because when she came and she applied for the Ghana card, she used different identifications. Initially, she applied with Nwang, and then she applied with Huang Wuxia, and this time when she was applying, she used Nwang, and this was in Tamale. When the court, as they said, she was living in Ahoji in Kumasi, but she procured or acquired the Ghana card and vaccination in Tamale. When they asked her, she said it's because some people owed her money. So there was a lot of drilling in court today, and then to the point where they put it to her that all this that she was doing was a scheme to get into the country undetected, so she could continue with the illegal mining activities, and then she suddenly broke down. At that point, the presiding judge told her that she should stop crying because those gimmicks does not really move her, and so
Piers, we have lost my colleague Lord Idwasari on the telephone lines just a short while ago, but the crux of the report has been made. He's been providing details as to exactly what it is that transpired and the court reason why the judge sitting on that case involving Aisha Juan had to caution her to stop crying in court. Always. You're listening to the news here on 3FM 92.7. Now, the Ghana National Association of Teachers says it intends to add delivery skills and performance of teachers to negotiate conditions of service from its employers. The Deputy General Secretary, Kwame Dagbajo, was speaking after an in-service training for teachers at Chebi in the Eastern region.
As a trade unionist, permit me to state that if we go to negotiate for improved conditions of service with the employer, we should be able to say that our teachers are living up to expectation, and that adds to whatever we say. Other than that, when you go, they say, oh, your teachers are not teaching, they are not doing this. We are saying that the Ministry of Education, through the Ghana Education Service, should make sure that they make funds available for the teachers to be trained in some of these areas, because they are so excited and they want this to be done.
Well, the training under the Canadian Teachers Federation, the CTF, and the Ghana National Association of Teachers NAT is designed to improve teaching and learning outcomes in schools, and we'll get a bit more from this. But let's do politics as we end this afternoon's edition of the news. And amongst many things, it is perhaps one of the constituencies with a unique and assertive voter population in the country, although known to usually favor presidential candidate of the NDC. The Lojokuku municipality, or constituency rather, is particularly notable for electing new members of parliament in every election. It is currently an orphan constituency for the NPP, and two aspirants, including former MP Bernard Okuboy, are expected to pick their nomination forms today after his attempt to retain the seat was quashed in 2020. My colleague Christian Yale is in the constituency ahead of that form picking. He's joined us on the telephone lines with a bit more details. Chris, who else apart from Dr. Okuboy is seeking to lead the NPP in the constituency?
So we know that there are about 5 aspirants who are seeking to lead the NPP in the Lojokuku constituency. As it stands, 2 of them, including Dr. Bernard Okuboy, are picking their forms today. Already, one of who is probably described as the closest contender to Dr. Okuboy in the person of Ni Ashite Olenu, has already picked his form. His supporters tout him as the new face to lead the NPP. And looking at the dynamics and the specialty when it comes to this constituency, they believe that it is the right time for them to bring him. They seem to be a philanthropist who is already, without any government support, doing a lot for the constituent. But again, Dr. Okuboy believes that it is possible for him to come back. He believes that even if people think the custom in this constituency, prohibit a second chance for an MP. He believes that it is possible for him to come back. He is saying that he is a medical practitioner who has been trained to understand that you never say die until the bones are rotting. So this actually brings in some, interesting realities, especially for a constituency that the constituents see their MP to be their agent of development and not even the municipal assembly. At the end of the day, we see how the dynamics go, but as to whether even the NPP is able to beat the incumbent NDC remains another big question that many political watchers ask, and it is one that we're also paying a keen attention to. Dr. Okoboy is yet to take his nomination for. We have Page Camp at the Lejokuku Municipal Assembly NPP office waiting for him, and we'll get some words and bring you more updates in our subsequent bulletins.
Chris, many thanks. Christian Yali ending the bulletin for us here on the Midday News on 3FM 92.7. As always, a lot more news if you log on to 3news.com. I am Eric Mawuena Egbeta. The business team is on standby with the very latest from the world of business.
It's time to pause from the tight schedules and deadlines, escape from the traffic after work, and unwind. It's 3FM Corporate Connect. Join us on Friday, the 28th of July at the Zinnia Event Center for the biggest outdoor corporate hangout to de-stress, unwind, and network. Come mingle with CEOs, business executives, entrepreneurs, and like-minded people at the most exciting corporate networking event in Accra. The 3FM Corporate Connect, powered by Origin, with fun corporate games, tasty grills over chilled, refreshing drinks, live band action, karaoke, and non-stop jam by seasoned DJs. All roads lead to the Zinnia Event Center in Cantonment after work on 28th of July 2023 for the 3FM Corporate Connect. For more inquiries and sponsorship, please call 0532 200 927. 3FM Corporate Connect. Unwind and network. Powered by 3FM 92.7 and supported by TV3 and sponsored by Origin.
3FM, your urban lifestyle radio.
Ghana, brace yourselves for another electrifying season of Ghana's most beautiful. The chosen ones prepare to embark on a transformational adventure. Our esteemed panel of judges, industry experts, and cultural icons will be present every step of the way to help these extraordinary women define their future. The stage is set for an unforgettable season filled with enchantment, passion, and the celebration of Ghanaian culture. So mark your calendars and join the live show this and every Sunday at 8 p.m. from July 16 here on TV3.
Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to Business Daily. Coming up, Bank of Ghana increases policy rate by 50 basis points to 30%. We'll bring you details. Meanwhile, some economists think the central bank is using wrong tools in managing the country's rising inflation.
So monetary policy is not working. In the short term, we're not fighting inflation the right way.
To just manage demand, you have to address the supply factors also.
My name is Bismark. Awusah will bring you details of our headlines and many other stories shortly. Thanks for staying. To our very first story, the Bank of Ghana has increased the policy rate by 50 basis points to 30%. This follows a meeting by the Monetary Policy Committee from July 19 to 21 to review the performance of the economy. According to the central bank, Average lending rate fell to 31.5% in June 2023 from a high of 35.8% in January 2023. This is equivalent to an average of 2.62% per month on loans charged by the banks. The following Business Desk report has more. According to the data from the Bank of Ghana, the average lending rate began easing in April 2023 as it dropped to 31.6%. This is surprising because inflation remains high at 42.3%. In January 2023, average lending rate stood at 35.85% and it went up to 36.64% in February 2023, but fell to 35.87% in March 2023. It fell again sharply to 31.66% in April and 30.94% in May 2023, but rose slightly to 31.5% in June. The dip in lending rates may be due to the fact that the banks are diversifying their assets following the impact of the domestic debt exchange program with a focus on lending, which is their core business. Meanwhile, the Monetary Policy Committee of the Bank of Ghana is set to announce developments in the economy with a key decision on the policy rate on today, July 24. Already, some analysts are anticipating a steady policy rate for the next 2.5 months. The central bank in May 2023 maintained its key interest rate at 29.5% as inflation continues to decline, citing tight monetary policy and stable currency as contributing factors. Meanwhile, some economists have observed that the Bank of Ghana is using the wrong tools in managing the country's soaring prices. Director of Business Operations at Daylex Finance, Joe Jackson, thinks Ghana's inflation is not expected to ease anytime soon.
This is Ghana. Rates have been persistently high. Our businesses are not driven by borrowing from the financial institutions. So monetary policy is not working. In the short term, we're not fighting inflation the right way. And the other way of fighting inflation is to say, I will use fiscal policy. I will increase taxes and I will reduce government expenditure. We all know what the problem is. We are refusing to reduce government expenditure. We have increased taxes, but the problem with taxes is that they're a very slow way to fight inflation. And for so long as we don't add the reduced government expenditure, we're fighting inflation with the wrong tools. Are we then surprised that it doesn't work well?
That was Director of Business Operations at Daylex Finance, Joe Jackson. Still on managing the country's inflation, Director of Research at the Institute of Economic Affairs, IEA, Dr. John Kwachi, says both monetary and fiscal policies must be deployed to manage the situation.
We have not been very successful in keeping inflation under control. We were successful for a few years, and then now we are back to a very high inflation era. And the problem is that we rely on monetary policy framework that essentially focuses on controlling demand pressures in the economy. What we have come to realize is that our inflation is also determined to a large extent by supply and cost factors. And this, we've been talking about food, importance of fuel in driving our inflation, transportation, and then of course the exchange rate. So you cannot use the Bank of Ghana policy rate alone, to just manage demand. You have to address the supply factors also. We're just asking both Bank of Ghana and government to, cooperate, work together so that they can also be addressing the supply and cost factors that drive inflation.
You heard the voice of Dr. John Kwachi, Director of Research at IEA. Besides the fiscal and monetary policies, a consultant, Dr. Abuaji Debra, says an effective approach in managing inflation in Ghana is to add other stakeholders like Ministries of Agriculture, Trade and Industry, and Transport, making inflation as part of their KPIs. He calls for inflation targeting approach to be abandoned.
The cost push inflation, which is the supply driven, where we have food supply, and that's current upward trend now, which is driven by food, where Ministry of Agric should be seen as an accountable source, because food accounts in terms of the CPI significant, and therefore in terms of KPIs, Ministry of Agric should be tasked. And that is where some of us, when we saw Plan for Food and Jobs, we thought there was a need to have that in terms of KPI. Unfortunately, we have plan for food and jobs. Yet the outcome of it is where we have food inflation. And it tells a story, okay? And that is where there must be some kind of more different approach of dealing with inflation management in Ghana.
You just heard economist and banking consultant Dr. Abuaji Deborah. Remember, you are still listening to Business Daily with me, Bismark Awusah. To other stories, the cedi displayed remarkable stability against the US dollar in June 2023 and continued to July, underscoring the importance of the IMF program on the country's economy. According to data released by the Bank of Ghana, the year-to-date depreciation of the cedi stood at 22.1% as of July 2020, after July 21. This figure shows marginal fluctuations from the preceding months, recording 21.8% in May and 22% in June. However, Director of Business Operations at Daylex Finance, Joe Jackson, attributes this to government not servicing the debt right.
Since the 18th of December last year, the government has been in default of its foreign exchange obligations. So we have not been servicing our debt. Eventually, we have to start doing so for the Euro bond and the foreign bond holders. Once we start doing this, guess what will happen? There'll be renewed pressure on the cedi. In addition, come October, we're entering the winter months. The price of fuel will go up on the world market. Fuel is our biggest single import. So that sort of stability we've enjoyed with fuel prices being stable, even sometimes coming down, will disappear. When you combine that with an expected rise in our exchange rates because of pressure on the dollar around the same time, the short-term prognosis is dire and we are running a lot of risk.
Now, producers and marketers of products with plastic packaging should brace themselves to pay for the collection, recycling, and management of the plastic waste, according to the Ministry of Environment, Technology, Science and Innovation. Director of Policy and Planning, Lydia Isua, made this known at a media briefing, indicated that the ministry is currently developing a legal framework to make the policy mandatory. Grace Hamwa Ajman takes up the rest of the story.
Managing plastic waste in the country has been a challenge, with governments introducing policies and interventions but not meeting targets. Producers of plastic products and packages will now pay for plastic management under a new policy.
Whichever private sector entity, be it a manufacturer, a producer, that brings any products that uses plastic packaging to the market, the country will hold that company responsible for the collection of the waste.
The ministry is not clear on how the mode of payments for this cost is going to be, but already there are concerns among marketers and consumers that this could lead to an imposition of a new tax or even an increase in the cost of products.
Honestly, it wouldn't be fun to hear that, knowing the recent increase in tax and the e-levies that we are entitled to pay. But looking at the bigger picture, if it's something small, why not?
If we have to pay a small token to support, I'm okay with it.
I usually carry a plastic bag to collect the waste, and that is rather better.
The waste and things are becoming too much. It's making the place, when it rains, and you see that a lot of dirty things are on the road. And then that one, what you see is no good, and then it's took the gutter. So I'm willing to support them to pay the distance so that they will take it away.
That's me there here. I say, I bet me the bus stop near Adena. Yeah, pack it, ball and it, but that's this about there. They say, no, mamu.
They should rather provide beans at vantage points rather than a new form of payment.
It is early days yet. The ministry even says it is now developing a legal framework to make this mandatory on producers and marketers. And we'll see how the implementation of this initiative pans out.
Ghana's trade surplus surged to $1.77 billion in the first half of 2023. This represents 2.4% of gross domestic product, according to the latest data as reported by the Bank of Ghana in July 2023. There's more in the following report.
The data highlights a sustainable growth from the $1.47 billion, representing 2% of GDP recorded during the same period last year. Ghana's trade performance was boosted by a notable increase in total exports, which reached $8.17 billion by June 2023, while total exports stood at $6.40 billion for the same period. Cocoa proceeds amounted to $1.48 billion in the first 6 months of the year compared to $1.41 billion a year ago. The value of gold exports continued to dominate, surging to $3.45 billion in June 2023, surpassing the $3.03 billion recorded during the comparative period in the previous year. However, a minor dip in crude oil exports was observed, standing at $1.66 billion in June 2023, in contrast to $2.83 billion in June 2023. Ghana's balance of payments showed a remarkable improvement, revealing a mere deficit of $107.8 million, approximately 0.18% of GDP.
And that will be all for Business Daily with me, Bismark Awusah. For more news, you can log on to 3news.com. Thanks for staying.